Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked out our program before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based program. And today I am going to bring in Ken Stark. Welcome to the program, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Billy. It's great to be here.
Awesome. I'm going to talk about your writing, and Ken is an award-winning horror writer, and I got to tell you, this is the first time that I can recall that I have talked to a horror genre type writer. So this is going to be good. According to Ken's Twitter bio, Ken is a questionable painter, unapologetic nerd, and a committed beer enthusiast. His books are available on Amazon and include the titles Arcadia Falls, the Stage 3 series, and Jitters. So let's kind of start from the basics here, Ken. Where are you from?
I live in Vancouver, Canada.
Yeah, and is that where you were born and raised, or?
I was born in the huge metropolis of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, but I've lived here for most of my life.
Wow. Okay. So I didn't realize that Vancouver was as far west as it is. You're not too far from the coast there, are you?
No, 5 miles. I mean, Vancouver is right on the coast. I'm just outside of Vancouver.
Wow.
But yeah, you can't go much farther west without getting wet.
That's good. When you're not writing, what do you like to do? I know you mentioned here that you're a painter, so I'm presuming that you do some paintings.
I do. There's sort of what I do there. I also do landscapes, really anything not horror related, although you do see that girl there.
Okay.
So I'm trying to expand. But
okay.
I learned painting from watching Bob Ross, if you remember.
Oh, sure.
The old show. That sparked the bug. And I don't know, it's just anything I can create, I will try to do that.
Yeah, you seem to be like a creator of sorts. Obviously, the writing and the artist stuff all goes into the same category of being an artisan of sorts.
Yeah, it's all about building your own world.
Yeah. When you're growing up, did you want to be a writer? Was that on your radar?
Oh, always. My earliest memories are sitting on my bed with a little school notebook, scribbling down ideas.
Yeah.
They were never good, and I never finished anything, but I've always wanted to be a writer. And now I am. So how lucky am I?
That's great. And I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have those inclinations, but they never can pursue them. So that's something that, you're very lucky in that regard, that you could take your passion and your talent and wield it into something.
Yeah, I am very lucky. It took a while to get the chops, but
oh yeah, I've heard, I don't know this is true, that most good writers, regardless of genre, very seldom do their best work before 30. It's not only developing the skills, but it's the life experience. I personally believe you have to be old enough to have observe the life cycle play out, see trends come and go, and all these other kind of things. And no matter how smart you are when you're 18, your ability to do that is limited. Would you say that is true?
Absolutely true. Everyone says you have to read a lot to be a writer, but I've always said you have to live a lot to be a writer. I remember writing things when I was a teenager that I had no idea what I was talking about, falling in love and having children. What does a kid know about that?
Yeah.
So yeah, the experience, if you can experience something, you can write it far more clearly.
Yeah.
Than if you're just making it up.
Let's talk a little bit about what the horror genre is, because a lot of times it's kind of like the word erotica. You say that to some people and they'll envision some sort of art.
Right.
Other people, porn comes to mind.
Yeah.
When you say horror, a lot of people envision the splatter films of the 1980s and the slasher movies. Other people harken back to the days of like Vincent Price. And that's kind of I was going to ask you about that too. I kind of feel that in today's horror, a lot of that camp is missing. I remember a lot of the scenes with Vincent Price. He'd kind of show a very long blade or something, hand it to his assistant, and say, "Please see to it that our guests won't be disturbing us this evening. I want a nice quiet evening." And then he'd do that laugh. You don't have that camp today. When you describe the horror genre to somebody, what exactly does that entail? Is it psychological? Is it, or you just create situations that are just very hard to get through? I mean, can you stand to look at this? In other words,
What I truly enjoy is taking ordinary people and dropping them into impossible situations. So it can be all action, all scary all the time, or it can have lighter moments, followed by these harrowing scenes. Really, what it comes down to is I want to give people nightmares, and I don't think slash and spatter really does that. It's shocking at the time, but it doesn't stay with a person.
Yeah.
So I want the reader to be fully immersed in the story, as if they were there, and you can't do that unless the characters are just ordinary, regular people going about their day, and then boom, this thing happens, and they have to deal with it. And it lets me get into the whole human psyche. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be a hero?
Yeah.
What does it take to be a hero? Maybe the guy who runs away is really the hero. So it lets me delve into the human condition a little bit better.
Yeah, that's much more layered. And I can appreciate that. I mean, I got into a discussion the other day whether Silence of the Lambs was truly a horror film or not, or was it a suspense film? And that's kind of what you're talking about there. There's a lot of layers to that movie.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and with how he manipulates the Jodie Foster character, for example. Here again, that's some very complex writing, and that's kind of what you're talking about. It would be very hard for a teenager to create that kind of material.
Yeah. The stuff I wrote, like I wrote an actual book when I was 14 or 15, and it was pure garbage. But it was I guess my 14-year-old imagination of what a good horror book would be.
Yeah. Um, is that what drives you attracts you, I should say, to the horror genre? Is that aspect of being able to do that to the audience? Is that kind of where it seems like you have a lot of inspiration towards that.
Well, everything I loved when I was a kid was sci-fi. Was Planet of the Apes and Twilight Zone and Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov. So it wasn't always scary, but I also grew up in the days of mutual assured destruction and the Soviet threat and assassinations in Vietnam. And the nightly news was its own horror story. So I don't know if it's because of who I am or because of what I want to inflict on other people. But yeah, I can't, even if I'm trying to write something that's not scary, there's going to be elements of scary in there.
Yeah. When you create a story, I don't have any, compared to somebody like you, I don't have any experience with writing. I did write a short story a number of years ago. And kind of what I did, I I had an idea for a scenario that I wanted to create, a very tense situation between some characters, and I had to construct the story to lead to that point. I've interviewed a lot of authors, and a lot of times they say they don't know where the story is going to go themselves. They simply create some characters. They start creating some conflict, and they go on, and they don't know ultimately how the book is going to end either. So I'm kind of curious as to what your school of thought there, what your modus of operandi is when you create a story like that.
Uh, I always know before I even start, before I type my first word, I know where I'm starting, I know where it ends, and I know all of the high points along the way, all of the plot points.
Really?
How I get from A to B, I sort of leave that to my imagination, because I find the story flows much more organically that way. And
Mm-hmm.
I can't possibly stick to a rigid outline, because then it just seems like work, and I don't want writing to seem like work.
Yeah.
It is my passion. I can't go the other way. I know a lot of writers do. I know Stephen King, I believe, does that. He just
Mm-hmm.
starts and he doesn't know where he's going. I can't do that. I
Yeah.
tend to go in 100 different directions, and it just turns into nothing. So I need to know where I'm going.
Sure, I understand that. Here again, a lot of times, what I hear from authors is there's a certain discipline. I will often hear, if you don't, let's say, have a whole lot of time, whatever time you create for writing, you got to stick to. So, like if it's Monday night from 6 to 8, Wednesday night 6 to 8, you create all those things, and whether you're in the mood to write or not, you sit down during those times and you create. You've got to stay disciplined in that regard. Is that something that works for you, or are you just so passionate about your work you just can't wait to get to the story at any given time?
Uh, just what you said. I'm so passionate, and I love writing so much that I will sit at my computer first thing in the morning, and I'll just go for hours. And if the muse isn't there, it isn't there. So I'll just I'll go to something else, or I'll you know go out for a walk or whatever.
Hmm.
But really, it's whenever I want to write, I will write, and I always want to write. So
Yeah.
it's not. I don't have to pick that time. I don't
Yeah.
need that motivation. I'm just always there.
I have a friend named Dorothy. She's a humor writer, and she tells me that writer's block is that's something that professional writers don't have. That's a affliction of amateur writers. You got to keep writing, of course. And in her case, she has a column and everything that's due. So you got to keep moving. You mentioned Stephen King, and that's probably one of the most famous horror writers of all time.
Right?
Do you have a writer or a director, let's say, whether it be, I was going to ask you what kind of movies you like, but let's start with the authors first. What are some of your y- the writers that you aspired to?
When I was young, I read everything Stephen King. I honestly, I haven't read any of his stuff in the last several years, but he's one of my inspirations, so I have to
Sure.
read him. Edgar Allan Poe, absolutely
Hmm.
love Poe. Lovecraft, uh, Jack Ketchum, uh,
Hmm.
Clive Barker,
Oh yeah,
uh,
sure.
and of course the classics, Bram Stoker, and
Yeah.
just I because I fell in love with these books when I was young. The
Hmm.
Invisible Man and whatnot. That they will always be my favorites, because they made me who I am, or they helped
Sure.
make me who I am.
Yeah.
I blame them.
When it comes to horror movies, are there any that you kind of like or that have made an impression on you over the years?
Oh, absolutely. The Shining, excellent book, wonderful, wonderful movie. You get Nicholson and Kubrick together. I mean, that movie is magic.
Yeah.
The Exorcist, also just absolutely astounding. I've seen it 100 times. I'll watch it whenever it's on.
Really? Okay.
Just just absolute perfection.
Yeah.
Uh, Modern horror, I don't know. There seems to be something missing with a lot of it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's kinda what I was saying, yeah.
Either the build up is too slow, and then there's a final reveal in the last 2 minutes. Well, now you've sat through 2 hours of build up for this one denouement, when really it should probably have worked a different way. So
Yeah.
the movies I grew up on, I can probably relate. Uh, I can tell you every word that every character said. Modern movies, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll remember them for an hour or two, and then they're usually gone.
Yeah, it seems like the reliance, here again, getting back to what I said about, can you stand to look at this? Where there's just this, people having drills put through their head and all this other types of things.
Yeah.
And I suppose the special effects in those things is better than what it was in years past. Although I would sometimes argue that I sometimes feel that CGI. Are you a movie fan? Let's start there. Do you like movies in general? Are you a movie fan?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't watch a lot of movies, but yeah, I do like to just empty my head and watch a movie.
Okay, well, let me kind of go off script here and ask you a little bit about technology, because I feel that CGI, for example, has done a lot for movies in general, but I've also noticed that people rely on it, directors and all that rely on it too much, and it starts to look like a really good video game after a while. It doesn't look real anymore.
Yeah.
And in regard to writing, there's a lot of programs now that will claim to help authors. Obviously, I don't necessarily mean word processing, but they have these templates and stuff to write a story. And I'm skeptical of that. I kind of feel that, if a computer would help you be a good writer that much, Shakespeare in his wildest dreams never envisioned a computer with a word processor and all that. But I would be willing to bet most people couldn't write a story is quite like that.
Yeah.
What is your opinion about that? It has technology, and this kind of encompasses everything, the self-publishing aspect of it, and everything else. Has it been a mixed blessing for the writing community, or what would be your analysis of that?
Well, independent publishing is absolutely a boon to writing, and readers have to love it because there's just more books out there.
Mhm.
As for the technology, I do know about those programs. I would never use one. To me, it seems like uh, a singer who uses technology to make their voice sound better.
Yeah.
It's them, but it's not really them. But really, if it's entertaining, then does it matter? I don't know. I truly don't know the answer, but I know that I would never go that route. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem right.
Yeah. I can
Plus,
tell you. Go ahead.
plus what I enjoy. So why would I want a computer to do my
Yeah.
job?
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you, as someone who's been in professional audio for a long time, a really good way to date your work is to rely on the technology of the time. If
Mm,
you want to sound like an 80s song, you use the electronic drums and synthesizers and everything of the time, it instantly dates your song.
yeah,
Whereas a guitar, a piano, real drums, all those things on down the line always sound like real drums,
yeah,
guitars, pianos, things like that.
yeah,
And you go back and listen to a lot of classic recordings, and especially the remastered ones, and they sound very relevant. So I would probably have to say that as a creator, you can rely on technology to help you do a lot of the busy work, like maybe the editing and things like that. And that's where, in my field, things have really improved from digital. But if you're relying on software, in my opinion, to fix a bad recording, you shouldn't be doing that. You should be
yeah.
learning your craft, learning microphones, learning proper sound, and things like that. I think that applies to so many types of creating that really has to be a human experience. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to be a painter, go be a painter. Maybe start with paint by numbers, but don't don't
Yeah.
rely on that for your daily bread.
Yes.
If you want to create a thing, create it.
Right.
Don't just punch a few buttons and let something else create it for you.
Sure. Let's talk about your work a little bit. At the top of the program, I mentioned Arcadia Falls. I noticed that one on social media a lot. Would you another question I had would be is if someone once is interested in in your books, should they read them in a certain order? I noticed the stage three. There's a number of those. So,
Yeah.
do you want to talk a little bit about maybe the content of your books, and how you would recommend people go about reading them if they choose to do that?
Well, the stage 3 books are zombies. So if you like zombies, start with stage 3. Then there's stage 3 alpha, then Bravo. You can probably guess what the next one coming out is going to be called.
Yeah.
If you don't like zombies, uh, Arcadia Falls, I'm extremely proud of Arcadia Falls. That's my favorite so far until the next one comes out, and then that will be
Sure.
my favorite. Uh, but yeah, I would if I were to recommend, I would recommend Arcadia Falls first. Uh, Good story. Uh, there's no slash and spatter. It was actually written with a younger reader in mind, so the language is clean.
Okay.
So that's a good place to start. Unless you like zombies, then dig into
Yeah.
history.
Yeah, and I would say if you're a fan of this kind of content in general, and you're not necessarily a zombie enthusiast, is to don't write anything off just on the basis of that. There have been times when I've been dragged kicking and screaming to certain things, and I've actually liked them. So yeah, always give things a chance. What is, let's say, stay with Arcadia Falls. What would be the best compliment someone could give you about that book? If they say, "I read your book, Ken," and what would be the best compliment that they could give you about that book?
Someone recently messaged me saying that because of Arcadia Falls, I am now their favorite author. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that.
Oh gosh, no.
Yeah, they might have a new favorite tomorrow, but for right now, this moment in time, I am their favorite author. And who doesn't want that? I mean, I don't think I can get a better compliment than that.
No, that is absolutely fantastic. An answer I often get from authors is they couldn't put the book down. That's another one that I often hear.
Yeah.
And those are the types of things. I wish every once in a while I'll get the bug. Maybe I should sit down and really try to write something, but it never really comes together for me. But that's one thing I'm very envious of, that you can take people, on a journey, and they're so enchanted by that it inspires their imagination enough that they can't put the book down. That's got to be very rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. And every time I sit down at the keyboard, I remember being that kid, reading those books, discovering those really grand masters like H.G. Wells and Poe. And I had never heard of them before. And I would sit down and just discover them. And it's like, wow, does anyone know this guy? Like,
Yeah.
have you read H.G. Wells? So if I can actually affect someone the way that one of those grand masters affected me, then like, wow, that's, dream come true.
Yeah. Um, Getting back to stories, and getting back to the genre as it stands today. I don't know that we've had a concept. It's just like with movies as a whole. The superheroes seem to dominate everything right now.
Yeah.
And if something is going to be horror, I don't know how many times the Dracula story can be redone. But I mean, it's like there's a producer in Hollywood listening to this guy says, "I got this idea for a script, and this guy can't go out during the day. He's got to drink blood." And oh yeah, boy, I've never heard that before. If you, let's say, for example, you've written some stories, have you pursued the idea of maybe doing a screenplay for one of them and trying to shop it?
I have thought of it. I would have to learn how to actually create a screenplay first, and
Hmm.
do it properly, and then I would have to market it, and I have no idea how to do that. So it's always there. It's always in my mind, but I have yet to act on it. Uh,
See,
I,
I'm gonna say I would encourage you to do that. A lot of times they'll get a screenwriter for you if they like the story, and that can sometimes get out of control. You had mentioned The Shining. There's a lot of stories behind Kubrick, and apparently the author of the book, Stephen King, not seeing eye to eye on the movie version of that.
yeah.
But aside from that, the way you describe your storytelling, I was going to have to say that would have to lend it well to a good screenplay. I mean, you could probably do a lot with character development, getting the audience to know those characters, and then taking them on a ride. I would think that would be something that would be very exciting for you. So I would say give that a shot. I mean, I would think you'd want it. Maybe you don't. I don't know.
Well, of course I would want that. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Uh, and you've inspired me. So yeah, I will absolutely pursue that.
Okay. Well, you better remember me when you become famous.
Sure. I'll send you a pizza.
He'll send me a pizza. That's good. Well, I'll tell you what, sausage and pepperoni can't win. Can't lose, right? Where can people find out more about you online?
Best place is go to my website, kenstark.ca. There's all the information about all the books. There's all the links. There's a few short stories. If you want to see what I do, you can just download some short stories for free. There's no sign up. There's no email address needed.
Mm-hmm.
Next best, find me on Twitter.
Okay.
I'm always on Twitter, Penniless Scribe, or just search my name.
Yeah. And it's just at Ken Stark, correct, on Twitter?
No, it's at Penniless Scribe.
I always, for some reason, I focus on your name, but what is the screen name again? It's at what?
Penniless Scribe.
Penniless Scribe. Okay. Yeah. Now you have Twitter. It's unusual if someone has thousands upon thousands of followers. That's a lot for Twitter. And you you are certainly well circulated and well known in the writing community on Twitter.
I am extremely lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say you're lucky you have good content. It's like the old saying goes, you do Twitter well and you work it well. And the more you do that, the luckier you get. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just for the sake of a curious point here, Twitter has changed a lot over the years. And I won't get into the politics of it, but there's no question that something really got turned up a notch in 2016.
Yeah.
Is Twitter the same experience for you as it was 5 years ago?
For me, yeah. I am completely apolitical. My Twitter feed is simply, a few of my books on the top, and then I'm just sharing everyone else's books and music and movies and whatever I can. So I stay out of all of the controversial nonsense. I just stick to mostly books. And so it's been the same experience for me all along. Nothing's changed.
Yeah. Now these titles, I'll hear again, the author Ken Stark. We're looking at Arcadia Falls, and then there's 3 stage 3 books. Is that correct? 3 of them?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So far.
And another book called Jitters. Yeah. Where can people find these books? I presume on Amazon under the author Ken Stark.
Yep, exactly right.
Okay, very good. Well, Ken, thank you very much for being on the program today. It was interesting. Like I said, the way you can go with the horror genre that's beyond the obvious. I really feel that people who the first words that come to mind are blood and guts when they hear the word horror. Your type of writing is much more complex than that. You have a different style that sends the audience down a different road, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about that. Thank you very much for being on the program today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Billy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. To my audience, thank you very much for checking out our podcast today. And just a reminder, you can find the Billy D's podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. No matter how you found us, I really appreciate you doing so. You can find the Billy D's podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on down the line. The vast majority of our listens do come from audio-only platforms such as those, although I do have a YouTube channel. If you want to give a gander to Ken and check him out, see what he looks like in real life, you can certainly do that. And also the Billy D's podcast page on Facebook. Now that one does get quite a few views for one reason or another, but I don't know why it is with YouTube. Not that I've really cultivated that much, but I mean, the vast majority of my listens, like let's say on Apple Podcasts or whatever, it's 1,000 to 1 compared to what it's like on the video channels. But I would have to say, getting back into social media, the one thing nice about YouTube is, and the reason you can't ignore it is it's like the number 2 search engine. I did find what I thought was a very good video that you had done on YouTube, but it didn't look like that there. Have you thought about cultivating that a little bit more for yourself? Or?
I have considered it. Yeah, let's just say I have a couple ideas in the works, because YouTube can be pretty powerful.
Yes, it can. And like I said, it's the number 2 search engine. So you want to make sure people can find you if they're looking for you there. And you seem very talented. The video that I saw, I thought was very good. So talented guy all the way around. Ken Stark, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you, Billy. My pleasure. Anytime.
Absolutely. I'm Billy D's. Until next week, everyone have a great week and stay safe. Well, hello everyone. I am Billy D's from the self-titled Billy D's podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and many more of the best podcast networks. Join me for my commentary and interviews. Follow me on Twitter, real easy to find, at Billy Dees. I am Billy Dees. I'd love to have you listen in.